Thank you everybody for joining today's call. I am Siddharth Agarwal. I am currently working with Veditum India Foundation and delighted to have you here for the launch event of India Sandwatch. Um, I have a few slides prepared where I'd like to take you through uh, Veditam's journey and then get you to India Sandwatch. I promise you it's not going to be too much, but hopefully you will enjoy listening to this. Veditam's journey essentially started with walking and especially walking along rivers. And since 2016, I have, along with a lot of fellows as part of Veditam's Moving Upstream Fellowship Program, have walked upwards of 6,000 kilometers along some of India's rivers. And the idea of doing this, the idea for these walks has been to learn. And through these learnings, then identify what are the challenges that are being faced by our rivers, challenges being faced by our riparian communities, and what are things that we can do, where are places where we can intervene in this process. Many of our efforts that we are currently undertaking have emerged out of our understanding that has developed through these walks. Moving Upstream and India Sandwatch have emerged as, if you want to call it, the flagship projects at Veditam. But there's a lot more that we do. We have other projects that we're undertaking. We have a lot of partnerships, and we believe that partnerships and collaborations are the only way forward for us to address any challenge or any problem. Individually, we cannot do much. We've also been trying to take our work across India to different kinds of audiences in different formats. So we're not only restricting ourselves to a single report, a PDF, or a film, but trying to expand ourselves in different ways and engaging with different mediums and methods through which we have been telling stories that we've been collecting, insights and analysis that we have been generating. And what I want to show you and talk about today, one is a bit about the Moving Upstream project, and second is how that led us through the different things that we've done into India Sandwich. To give you a bit of context about what we've been doing at Veditam and where we've been. So this is a map of the different rivers that we've walked at Veditam, might have been as part of the Moving Upstream project or as part of the Moving Upstream Fellowship Program. And this is sort of the geographical distribution. We're trying to increase the geographical diversity of the Moving Upstream program as well, of rivers that we walk in Northeastern India, Western India, and Southern India. So that's something that we're trying to expand. And whatever we've learned through these projects and work that we've done, we've been trying to share it in different methods. On the left are some photographs that our fellows from our Moving Upstream program Moving Upstream Fellowship program have taken from a walk along the river Sindh, a walk along the river Betwa. And on the right, you see a poster from the documentary that we made from a 3,000 kilometer walk along the river Ganga. And there are more ways in which we've told stories. You can see zines that some of our folks have prepared, soundscapes that people have prepared. We recently published articles in Hindi for a children's magazine, narrating the story from these walks, trying to make connections between the stories that we're seeing on the riverside and people who are interested, especially young minds who need to sort of, especially those who stay in cities, to understand what this larger landscape looks like. On the right, you see the book Along the Betwa, which is an outcome of the Moving Upstream Fellowship Program and has also been distributed globally. I think one of the authors is also there with us today in the session. We've also shared stories in forms of webinars, web discussions. So we've done sessions for all the rivers that we've walked and more. And these walks, right? When I was walking along the Ganga in 2016 is the first time that I saw sand mining happening at scale. And at a scale that I couldn't fathom, at a scale that I did not imagine that I would ever see this activity happening. So on the left, what you see is parts of sand mining activity that's happening on the Son River in Bihar. And on the right, what we have is the sand mining activity that's happening at the River Ken in Bundelkhand in Uttar Pradesh. And these experiences of being at these places have slowly nudged my interest towards this topic. And then there have been many things that have happened over time that have constantly been nudges, which has led us to the India Sandwatch project. These experiences were in 2016 and 17. And I remember that in 2018, I was in Delhi for some work. And I actually was bed rested because I had immense amount of pain in my back. And somehow I just came across this tweet where the Chief Minister of Punjab had tweeted saying that I was traveling in my helicopter and I saw this mining activity happening on the Satluj River, and I will initiate an inquiry on this topic. And I thought to myself that, okay, this is a good initiative by Captain Saab and he wants to take action on this topic. But why let him get away with just taking action on this one location? What if we could collect all the locations on the river Satluj and give it to him as proof saying that, hey, you should take action on all of these locations. What I ended up doing was, while I was making this map, I was also tweeting about it. And one of my tweets was seen by my friend Akshay, who's also here in the call. And Akshay messaged me saying, Siddharth, what if we could do this at scale? What if we could do this identification of data at scale? And what could that result in? And that one conversation that got initiated with Akshay in 2018 has eventually led to 2023 when we are talking about this project. Akshay would later on move on to go on to found with other partners, Ooloi Labs, with whom we've partnered to do the work at India Sandwatch. And these have been the small nudges that we have got over time to move towards the project that you're seeing today. The learnings have happened through the walks that I've mentioned. The learnings have happened through a lot of the media reports and analysis that has come out through civil society organizations and NGOs who continue to play an extremely important part. I want to highlight two such sources. One is South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People. Bhim, who works at Sander, has been tirelessly creating report after report based upon media reporting from different parts of India, along with a network of people who he has created around him who are interested in this topic. I've also learned tremendously from the India Rivers Week 2020 conference, which was on the topic of sand mining, and experts from across India and community members from across India had come forward to present their views, their understanding on the topic of sand mining. And I learned tremendously. In fact, a lot of the base understanding regarding the laws for sand mining in India for me were formed during the India Rivers Week conference. Beyond the conferences and the civil society work, media reports have been crucial in understanding how widely spread this challenge is. On the left, what you see is a screen grab of the news reports that have been archived on the India Sandwatch portal. We will see this later in detail. And there's a lot, and these have been important entry points for us to understand what's happening across India through the media perspectives, which then has also informed a lot of court cases that have happened. In some cases, people have been able to take information to the court, have been able to file cases, petitions in the NGT mainly, which has resulted in action. But in a lot of cases, the judges at the NGT are also driven, who take suo motu cognizance of reports in the media and then file cases. So then the question is that if this is something that is happening, how can we enable more of this information to reach the court? How can we enable more of this information to reach the right places where it needs to reach, to convert into action? because the courts, whatever they are saying, especially the NGT in regards to the sand mining activity, as well as the Supreme Court, has resulted in shaping the policy of India the way it is today. We will look at it briefly right now, but it has uh, changed how policy is designed, implemented, how action is taken. And these are important things in the larger scheme of things. What India Sandwatch will allow, right, or what we hope it will allow, is for more of this information to be available to citizens, more of this information to reach the courts, and then also act as a tool for both research and capacity building of different kinds of users. And the combination of all of this, forming intelligence, understanding signals and analysis of this kind of data, providing access to citizens to be able to take action, and creating a sense of accountability by keeping a tab on these pieces of information is what we are aiming to do with India Sandwatch. Before we move on to seeing a bit more about the platform, what I want to talk to you briefly about, and I think some of our partners will highlight this even further, is why is it even important to do this in the first place? And where it starts is the fact that okay, so before I talk about where it starts, this is a slide that I prepared talking about where are the different points of intersection of the activity of sand mining with different activities that exist around it. These are uh, social justice issues, these are environmental justice issues, these are fiscal justice issues, these are challenges that transcend sometimes the imaginations we might have. And each of these intersections then also become a place for a story to emerge. So if you're a journalist, if you're a media person and you're looking for a place where you can find an intersection that can be explored to report about this topic, there are a variety of intersections that can be explored to report about this topic. But why is it important to do this is, first, there is excessive extraction and loss that is happening both at legal sites of mining as well as illegal sites of mining. There is illegal mining also, but there is illegal mining happening at legal sites as well. So that's first. Second is an extreme amount of biodiversity and habitat loss that is happening as a result of excessive sand mining and unscientific sand mining. Our friends from WCT, Wildlife Conservation Trust, who are our partners on this project, are going to talk about this in a bit more detail later on. Beyond that, there is a lot of challenge of fiscal loss, the amount of money that is leaking through the system because of the sector of sand mining. There are various estimates, the numbers are very wild. Conservative estimates seem to be in the range of tens of thousands of or even 1 lakh crore annually. And that is a lot of money that is leaking through the system. And what it enables then, that kind of money leaking through the system enables all kinds of nefarious activities that hurt society itself, which again is a reason for trying to address this challenge of accountability. And we know that we have a rising population in India. We know that there is increasing urbanization in India. What that means is that the need and demand for sand is going to only increase unless there are interventions where alternatives are brought in. There are reimaginations of ways in which we make our cities and plan our towns. And all said and done, if we must continue mining, if we must continue extracting this mineral, how does the revenue then get distributed? How does a citizen who's affected by that activity, does that citizen continue to be sidelined, or do we bring them in the process of receiving benefits out of the mining activity? So there needs to be a reimagination of also how proceeds are distributed. And this is important because the Madhya Pradesh CAG report from a couple of years ago clearly highlights that no money from sand mining activity has actually reached the villages from the where the mining activity has taken place, and which is extremely disheartening, because if you look on the slide itself, you can see that at the village level, there is a lot of loss that's happening, and those losses are not being compensated in any way at all. So there is a need for that reimagination. And then finally, that there is a lot of loss of life happening. This is happening, of course, for biodiversity and our species, but it's also happening for innocent bystanders. It's happening for children who are drowning in mining pits. It's happening for people like activists and media persons who are trying to take action or report on this topic. In fact, it's also happening against officials who are wanting to take action on this topic in different parts of India. And these are well-documented incidents, which mean that this becomes so much more important to address. Coming to India Sandwatch, wanted to paint a larger picture and context for us to come here. What is India Sandwatch? India Sandwatch is an open data project by Veditum India Foundation in partnership with our friends at Ooloi Labs, and is supported by Rainmatter Foundation. India Sandwatch is enabling the collection, annotation, and archiving of data related to sand mining in India. We're doing this through collaborating with other partners, collaborating with individuals and organizations, and we're trying to build capacity for deepening the research on this by widening the research on this topic, and for building capacity for actors to be able to take action. Just a quick glimpse into the legal landscape in India. I'll start with saying that sand is classified in India as minor mineral. Minerals are classified as major and minor in India. Major minerals are identified, auctioned, and the process monitored at the central level. The minor minerals have guidelines at the central level, and each state is required to create their own laws, which then govern how the monitoring and auction, identification, auction, and monitoring of the resource happens at the state level. This is something important to keep in mind because this complicates reporting if you're looking at a wider scale beyond one state, because the rules change beyond states. And what's also important to keep in mind, the complexity, is that rivers form a lot of our administrative boundaries at block level, at district level, at state level. And that fluidity that a boundary offers also complicates things, because which rule of law will you apply for state A or state B? Now, the guidelines and frameworks have been set at the central level, which brings us to the state laws, that each state then has to create an amendment in their minor mineral rules for that state and say that we have our own laws and this is how we will operate. This defines where you can mine. Can you mine close to a bridge? How far and close to a bridge can you mine? What kind of equipments can you use? Those then get defined as part of the state laws. And when the amendment to the state laws have happened after 2016, when the Ministry of Environment and Forest issued guidelines, fresh guidelines, what each state had to do was to create district survey reports for each of its districts. And this is an example from Patna district in Bihar, where each district in each state of India is required by the central guidelines to create a district survey report, which identifies where in that district can it extract sand from or minor minerals from. And that then becomes binding on the auctioning process, that the auctioning can happen as a subset of the potential identified within a district survey report. Coming back to the example that I had shared earlier regarding the observation made at the Son River while I was walking along the Ganga, one of my first experiences, and it was really overwhelming to be there, to be observing this. Over the years, I've crossed this river again on foot, on a car, over the bridge, on a train, even on a flight. And I was able to observe that same sand mining activity from 30,000 feet above the ground as well. The scale is just mind-numbing at how it works. And my understanding has developed over time, looking at things that are like I've illustrated earlier. But there has not been a solid way for me to contribute this data somewhere. It has always been sitting in my archive. The idea is then, how do you do this work? How do you take this forward? How do you enable somebody with this kind of information to collaboratively work towards addressing this? Just showing you a glimpse of what has been happening at this location. This is a satellite image from the same location that I just mentioned to you. And what I'm marking out on the screen are clear patterns of sand mining activity that is visible from a satellite image, and not a very high resolution satellite image, but we can see that mining activity is happening. What this activity would technically or ideally mean is that there is an auction process that has happened for each of these locations. And for each of those auction processes, there is a district survey report that is validating the data of the auction process. Is that happening or not happening is a question that we have to answer. But how do we answer that question? Can we answer that question for only one location, or can we answer that question at scale? Is the question that comes to us. And with that, I'd like to show you an example of how this whole situation can be made actionable. Imagine that I have reached this location and I have observed the challenge of sand mining, or an instance of sand mining, and I want to add this information to a common archive. How do I make that happen? Just to illustrate this as an example, that one second. Right. Say I observed sand mining at this location. What could I possibly do? I messaged my colleague Anirvan on WhatsApp saying that I am at this location and this is the GPS coordinate, and I've observed sand mining activity over here. Could you document this as a case report on the India Sandwatch portal? Anyone asks me some counter questions, give me some more details, please be safe, and says he will create a case file on the platform, a case report on the platform. What is this case report? Is our way of entering into the platform that we've created and explaining how this is happening. So I'll invite my colleague Anirvan to show us how he is creating this case report.
Thank you, Siddharth. I'll just share my screen and take you through this. So now that we have the data, we'll go to the India Sandwatch platform. And this is what the platform looks like. And users can access and view data which has been added to the platform. And to be able to add data, they'll need to log in. So I'll log in into my account. Yes. So now that we have the data to create a news report, we'll go to add data. And you can see here there are various resources which can be added to our platform. We'll add a case report. First, I'll enter the title. The title for this would be the Patna district. And this was observed on the Son River from the year 2017. And this is helpful for the users to identify and locate data, locate these case reports. And then we add the date of observation, which is 2nd March 2017. And next, I'll add the coordinates which have been shared to me by Siddharth. And I'm going to the chat which Siddharth has shared and copying that data. So I've added the latitude and now I've added the longitude as well. And then I click on Fetch Map. Yes. So you can see this is the satellite image, which this has fetched from the nearest available date from the date of observation. And you can clearly observe that there's a lot of sand mining activity happening in this location at that point of time. And next, there are a set of questions like, were machines used in the process? And we select yes. And we specify the types of machines used, which Siddharth had messaged us with. And then we add notes from the location, notes from what Siddharth had observed in that particular location. And we add that here. And the next part is the pictures. We do not recommend for people to take pictures from locations, as it poses a threat to life. And Siddharth has also experienced this firsthand while being on these locations on the field. But if you do have location images, you can add it over here. And then we add certain tags, the state tag, which will assist us in finding the location and mapping it, followed by the district tag, and towards the end, the river tag. And once we have done this, we can publish this. So now we've published this, and we're going to take a look at it. So you can see the date of observation followed by the satellite image and all the notes we've added. So this is what the case report looks like. But now there's an option to share an update. This is what is going to help us build a case and consolidate it. And I'll take you through these updates. So we can add administration related data where we ask questions of parliamentary constituencies, assembly constituency, forest circles, these questions. And these become important in addressing accountability. And then there's information on tender. We can upload the PDF for the tender from this location, the district survey report, the environmental clearance documents, related news reports from that particular location of that district, and court cases, and any additional observations at a later date by any other user can be added. Like now I had added this data which Siddharth had shared. Like maybe Siddharth was on field and he didn't have access to the platform. So he shared it with me on WhatsApp, and now I'm able to create this. Similarly, if anyone else goes to that location on a later date, we'll be able to add these observations, comments, and other documents to this update section. And then that will be updated over here. Say I have some notes which I've added from 2023 August, and then I submit it. You can see over here that this has been added here. So this is what the case reports look like. And going back to the image over here, we can see that there's been rampant sand mining taking place here, and which implies that ideally there should have been a tender which would have been released. The tendering process where locations are auctioned off ideally should have been present. So now we look at how we can digitize these tender documents on our platform. Just a second. Yes. So now we go to the tender document section, and we look at the tender from that location, Patna. And this is from the year 2019. You can see first we have the state and the district tag, followed by the PDF of the tender. The PDF here becomes very important because in a lot of cases, these documents might not be available at a later date. Excuse me. They might be taken down, or those links might not be working. And Siddharth had done this exercise where they had kept a list of all the tenders and district survey reports, but those links were not active anymore. So that is why it becomes very crucial for us to upload the PDF onto the platform over here. And we see that this is on the river Son, and there are 43 identified locations. And this is the first location. The data of the first location has been digitized here. And you see these are the geocoordinates of that particular location, along with the area and the reserve price for that particular location. Similarly, there are all the locations have been, all 43 locations have been added to the platform here. And over time, we will also have maps available from these particular locations, which will help the user analyze and understand the geographical distribution of all these quarries. And these are all the 43 locations which have been digitized. And these are the tags towards the end, the date of issue of this document. And this has been drafted by the Mines and Geology Department. Yes. And another thing which I'd like to highlight is that not in all tenders that there are all these coordinates might not be available in a lot of tenders. That information is not given in all of the tenders, but it is mandatory that they provide us with that information. And yeah. And the last thing which I'd like to highlight here is that these tenders documents are hard to locate because in a lot of cases they are behind subscription-based website, and they're mandatory to log into to be able to access these documents. So it becomes really hard to locate these documents. So the quarries which have been identified and auctioned in the tender document have to be necessarily a subset of the deposits that have been identified as auctionable in the district survey report. Hence, it becomes very essential for the district survey reports to be digitized as well. Now we'll go to the district survey report and see how they have been added to the platform. For Patna, we do not have the district survey report from that particular year. So we'll be looking at another district from Bihar itself, Gaya. And this is from the year 2022. Till the time this is loading, I would like to emphasize on the fact that these district survey reports need to be present wherever there's mining activity happening in a district. And the main features of a district survey report is to identify locations and where sand depositions are present, and how much amount, and the total amount of sand which can be extracted from those locations are also mentioned in this document. They also give us revenue details from previous years. And similar to what we had looked at earlier in the tender document section, the state and the district tag, followed by the PDF which has been uploaded. And then all the rivers mentioned in this, which are relevant for this district survey report. And you can see there are 95 locations here. And this is the first quarry. And similar to the previous section, these are the coordinates and notes added by the user. And 95 locations take a lot of time to add. Just wanted to highlight that part. And this has been digitized by one of our interns who worked with us over the past 2 months. So yeah, and this is what we're trying to do. This is how we're trying to digitize this onto our platform and push for accountability. Now, as Siddharth had earlier highlighted that the DSR was mandated because of the Sustainable Sand Mining Management Guidelines 2016 by the Central Ministry of Environment. Based on these guidelines, the state drafts their own respective policies and laws. And these are further digitized in our guidelines and analysis section. And in this section, we have central guidelines, state policies and laws, and we also have analysis by civil society organizations and NGOs. And we also have the provision to add peer-reviewed scientific papers to this section. I'll take you through one of these reports. This is from West Bengal. And here again, we follow the same thing. We add the PDF. There's a brief summary and key points, and then there are tags. So this is what the guidelines and analysis section looks like. And this forms the base of the sand mining sector. And it becomes very important in understanding and gaining an in-depth knowledge of how the sector works and how there have been various analyses emerging from this. And these guidelines and these laws are very influenced by the court cases, and their court cases become a very crucial part of this process because they shape these policies. So now we look at the court documents bit, and courts have taken a lot of action where illegal mining has been happening. They've taken action on their own, and court is like people seek justice in these locations. People go to these courts for justice, and that is why this becomes a very important resource for us. And we see how they have influenced the policies. Similarly to the previous sections, we add the PDF, the summary of the document, and other relevant questions. And these court cases, in a lot of cases, these court cases emerge from reporting, from media reporting, and where they have reported about a particular location when there's a lot of mining, a lot of illegal mining happening, a lot of violations, and that is why news reports forms also a very important part of our platform. And media also, in a lot of senses, becomes the last resort for a lot of affected citizens. And here we have added news reports, almost 700 news reports from across the country. And they report about illegal mining, about deaths, about children drowning in a lot of instances, and talking about the river health and how it's affecting the communities. So now we'll look at one of these reports. We follow the same thing here. We add the PDF, a summary, and followed by tags. And you've been looking at these tags throughout the presentation. And I would like to show how these tags. Yeah, before I do that, I'll show all the questions which we asked in this section. And towards the end, we also have a comments section where people can ask questions, have discussions. So yeah, now looking at these tags, these colored tags, if I click on one of these tags, the river tag, it takes me to a page where all information from the river Chambal is present. The district survey report, the tender documents, the court documents, everything is in this one location. And we can further search and find a particular report or filter it. And this becomes a very important tool for someone who's working on Chambal, or for that instance, working on Yamuna or any of the rivers. All river tags have these river specific pages where they can come and look at the data which have been added. And again, similar to the tender documents and the district survey reports, we'll soon have a map visually presented here of all the data which has been added and from where it has been added. And we'll go to the collection page now. So this is the river collection page. Collection page is essentially all the data compiled in one location. And you can see all the news reports, district survey reports, court documents, all the resources which have been added here. And you can go to Yamuna's this thing, similar to the Chambal page. And similarly, we have a collection page for the state. If I go to the Bihar thing, you can see all the news reports, the district survey reports, which we've gone through, the tender documents. All of it is in this location. Now I'd like to invite Siddharth to continue.
Thanks, Anirvan. I hope you've gotten a sense of what we're trying to do with this platform. And we will now be hearing from our partners about their perspective, about what their thoughts are, how they are involved, how they imagine this to proceed ahead. But while they speak, what I want you to think about is to think about how this work, how this platform that you've seen can intersect with your work. And while you listen to all the partners speak, who will start speaking now, what ways can you imagine in which this platform can be of use to you, can be of use in your work? And once we've heard our partners speak, then we'll talk a little bit about our plans for the coming months and coming years. And we'd love to then answer your questions once we've done that bit. So with that, I'd like to invite Akshay from Ooloi Labs to come and speak and share his views. Akshay?
Hi, thanks, Siddharth. And thanks, Anirvan, for the Siddharth and Anirvan for the presentation. I'm Akshay. I'm one of the co-founders and partners at Ooloi. And I think Siddharth briefly shared how I got involved in this project in general. So I won't kind of rehash that story. But I think one thing I'll mention is that I think we held this idea of how data is scarce around this issue of sand mining for the last five-ish years. And I think we had a lot of thinking and trying to kind of figure out how remote sensing plays a role in this. But over the last few years, as part of my work with Ooloi Labs, we developed the open knowledge framework. And I think it kind of, the framework developing happened around the same time that Veditum's efforts around enabling more data collection, storytelling around water bodies and rivers in India also kind of started ramping up, and things kind of fit together well, and we were able to find fantastic support from Rainmatter at the same time for us to be able to put this together. So I just want to briefly talk about the technology piece that Anirvan kind of took us through. It's powered by a framework that our team at Ooloi designs, develops, and maintains, called the Open Knowledge Framework. And the idea there is to enable communities like this, or organizations like this, to build up these sorts of data sets and then to kind of take action. And we have a very strong belief that technology is probably the smallest part of this puzzle. The larger kind of effort is kind of convening interested individuals, organizations, who then make efforts to add this data and then use it. Some of our work with the Open Knowledge Framework bleeds into many other kind of domains, education, menstrual health, water, in other kind of intersections. And I think our effort in general is to kind of be more than a tech vendor, but to kind of provide the sort of support that organizations like Veditum and collectives like India Sandwatch require to be able to meet their objectives, and kind of try and make sure that the technology and the social parts of using that technology are taken care of. I will pause there, not because I don't want to go on and on about the work we do, but really, really happy that we've been able to from a Twitter DM conversation, bring it to this point. It is unreal to have all of you kind of looking at this work that this fantastic team has put together. So yeah, back to you, Siddharth.
Thanks, Akshay. So next in the line for partners is actually Samir from Rainmatter, but I think that he's not here. We'll see if he can join in a bit, and then otherwise I have a backup video for Samir which I can possibly play. So we can possibly go to Nachiket from WCT, who will be speaking as well. Nachi, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. Am I audible? Yeah. Uh, yeah, can you hear me? Okay. So thanks very much, Siddharth and Anirvan and everyone here for this opportunity. India Sandwatch is a really visionary effort by Veditum, by Ooloi Labs and Rainmatter Foundation. And as we all know, sand mining is one of the most hurting issues that remain today to our riverine ecosystems, biodiversity. It's also a much bigger crisis in terms of what the larger society, human society faces in terms of whether it's related to its connections to crime or to governance, equity issues, and so on. And, as Siddharth mentioned, during the India Rivers Week conference of 2020, we realized that data is not only scarce, but also very scattered. So in that respect, we took a lot of pain to compile whatever we could at the time. But really, I mean, India Sandwatch really addresses that gap of, bringing all that scattered and difficult to access information in one place. Which I have no doubt that it will be a very valuable contribution with very lasting impacts on this science society interface, as I like to look at it. Our organization, Wildlife Conservation Trust, we have two programs which completely focus on riverine wildlife and biodiversity, as well as connected livelihood issues like fisheries. Which, our main focus is the Gangetic Plains of India and Central India, where we continue to do this work. And we are really happy to be working with India Sandwatch as a knowledge partner, mainly to, understand, learn, as well as make some small contribution in terms of the ecological impacts of sand mining, especially in rivers where critically endangered and threatened species as well as important fisheries still remain. I would just like to add a few points here that I think, sand mining, I mean, we all understand the gravity of the issue, but there is a need to understand it in the context of larger river basin management. And as we know, dams and barrages, impoundments, embankments, canals are kind of inseparable from this problem at various scales. And what we are seeing now in terms of a policy transition is that gradually, although it's still very much wanting, there has been some warming up to ideas related to minimum flows or environmental flows somewhere. But sediment flow and sediment management is still, very much left behind when we talk about integrated river basin management. This applies to various things. It could apply to water sharing and allocation mechanisms between districts or between states. Engineering calculations which are made to see what sediment is in excess or what water is in excess, deficit, whatever, are only a very small part of the larger problem. And this is because already when most of our rivers have been dewatered, sand itself appears to become a problem. So which is why many people are, or they tend to think that, sand mining is required. I mean, of course, the revenue aspect of it is on one side, but also because we think of sand as an impediment, especially by somewhere ignoring that the water that was supposed to carry that sand is not available anymore in rivers. So in a way, just trying to engage with the issue of sand mining through this portal itself is going to open up a lot of really difficult issues as well in this connection. And when we look at social change, when we look at the whole criminal political economy that engulfs the business of sand mining. And when we look at climate change, on the other hand, engaging more with sediment management is going to be really critical. Of course, many questions remain difficult to tackle at this point. Who will monitor? How will monitoring be possible? How can multiple departments come together to, I don't like to use the word objectively, but let's say optimally understand when sand becomes an impediment and when sand mining becomes a curse to the riverine social ecological system that they are dealing with. Yeah, so in that way, we are here. We are dealing with a very multidimensional and complex issue, and this step taken by Veditum as and other partners with India Sandwatch definitely marks an effort in a very important direction. And I think as more and more information gets integrated through the medium of this portal, a lot of insights will emerge. I'm quite confident of that in the time to come, in such a way that the community users that engage with this portal will also be able to engage with newer dimensions and dynamics that we are going to witness in the near future. So with that, I thank all the organizers again, and we can have the next speaker in. Thank you.
Thanks, Nachi. Tarun, would you want to come on now?
Yeah, just give me a moment. Hello, Siddharth.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so thanks, Siddharth. Okay, and good evening, everyone. So, yeah, my name is Tarun Nair, and I'm a conservation biologist with the Wildlife Conservation Trust. And much of my fieldwork happens along rivers, since my work largely concerns crocodilians. And while places such as these are often very picturesque, scenes such as these are fairly common, unfortunately. And so one might even ask,
slide is not changing, Tarun.
Oh.
We're still on your, we can only see your PowerPoint window. We can't see the presentation window.
Oh, wait, that's strange.
Yeah, now.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at,
yeah.
I think it's working on. Yeah, so while scenes such as these are, one is sand being an inert substance and looks pretty lifeless. So why is it even an ecological concern? And that's because sand plays a decisive role in both development and quality of riverine systems. And the moment the transport of these sand particles is what is known as sediment dynamics, these often determine river morphology and habitat forming processes. And if this continuity in sediment transport is interrupted for any reason, flows become what are known as sediment starved, and then downstream areas are prone to erosion and channel deformation and so on. And broadly, ecological impacts of sand mining on rivers, especially where direct removal, aggregate removal is seen, leads to severe ecosystem damage downstream, habitat loss, physical changes to ecosystems, and so on. Whereas indirect impacts can mean altered changes, channel morphology, and deterioration of water quality, hydrological changes, and also changes in food web, because animals lower in the trophic level are severely more impacted with these sorts of changes. And many of these abiotic impacts are broadly divided between changes to, say, channel morphology, alterations to the composition, and movement of sediment. And many larger changes include severe alterations to the flow regime and impacts in water quality. So coming back to our field sites, so these sorts of scenes again are common, and many are tempted to suggest that this might be even coexistence. But we are under no such illusion because these large sand deposits are critical breeding habitats, which are few and far between. And you can see what kind of changes or what kind of damage happens to these sites. So this is one of the most important breeding sites in the jungle for both gharials and many freshwater turtles. And continuous mining over a period of years has pretty much destroyed this entire site. And you'll see through some of the images we'll see now. So this is what the site used to look like before large-scale mining took over. And then over the years, we've just seen it get completely destroyed and it's disappeared. And you can see the mining scars clearly in these sorts of scenes. And it's not just areas near the villages that are being mined, but even actual nest sites are being completely excavated, and which is what news reports regularly cover. So sometimes there are these large dumps in the middle of the city. Government projects, road building projects use sand from these areas. And oftentimes you see large clutches of gharial eggs from these sorts of dumps, sand dumps in the middle of town. So we have, as part of our work, tried to collate and organize some of this data, at least from the sites we work in, but we've never managed to organize this in a useful or usable manner. And I think what Siddharth is attempting here with the Sandwatch portal is one admirable, because he's doing it at scale across so many sites. And we've also, and it becomes doubly useful because oftentimes we come across cases where authorities, either within the state or agencies like the National Green Tribunal, they take up matters suo motu, and they often invite expert opinion. And because these things happen with short notice, we are often left scrambling for trying to put together information and so on. So these sorts of portals will play an important role, I think, when these actions are happening, however rare they are. And yeah, so we look forward to working together with Siddharth and his team. And this is a good template to consider even with other threat mapping exercises we want to undertake in these landscapes. So over to you, Siddharth.
Thanks, Tarun. I think that was quite useful to see from your pictures and both your and Nachi's presentation about the severe impact this is having on species. And just to quickly mention that at least for WCP, what we are thinking of doing is to combine the kind of species level observation data along with sand mining data to see what kind of threats we can see these species facing in these different places, so that we can push different kind of levers with different kind of perspectives. In some places with environmental justice, in some places with social justice, in some places with species level information on how can we push these different levers to move the conversation forward and translate into action. I will now invite Suraj, who's here. Suraj, are you here? Hi. Welcome, Suraj.
I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm here. So, it's still early, so I'm a little slow.
Okay. So Suraj is joining us from Berkeley. I'll let Suraj introduce himself. But Suraj and Ando, I think, who's also here, are part of the Global Policy Lab and a project at UC Berkeley, who had also come on board as partners to the India Sandwatch project. And Suraj will tell you a bit about himself, about the work he does, and what we are imagining with our collaboration that we are doing. Over to you, Suraj. Do you have any slides?
Yeah, I can share. I have a couple of slides, but I can share that. Give me 1 second. Okay, can you see my slides? Hello?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
You can see my slides, right? Sweet. Right. Firstly, Siddharth, congratulations to you and your colleagues and collaborators on the launch of the portal. I think when we first met a few months ago, most of our conversation was spent discussing how sand mining is such a terrible thing, and how there's all of these small pieces of data exist all over the place, and there's no central repository. And we were so happy to learn that you were working on this. So yeah, congratulations on the launch. To quickly introduce myself and Ando, who's I think is here somewhere. We're PhD students at UC Berkeley. We work with the Global Policy Lab. Most of the people we work with think about how satellite imagery can be used in combination with other things, other data sets, computational tools, to study some of the pressing challenges that face us today in global sustainable development, and to think a little bit more about how we can address some of these challenges. I won't spend too much time talking about why sand mining is one such challenge, because many of the people here have already done that in a more eloquent way than I can. But as I mentioned, I think as far as sand mining is concerned, the lack of data is a real barrier when it comes to monitoring sand mining and its impacts over time. And this is something, as many people have pointed out, where we think remote sensing can really play a role in smoothing some of these data gaps and helping us keep track of these really harmful activities over time. In this image on the left, we've actually just animated a snapshot of images over a mining site in the River Ken. And even in Tarun's presentation, I think you can clearly see, if you just look at satellite images over time, you can see the riverbank changing, you can see the process of sand being deposited, the process of flooding happening, and you can also see very clearly the mining scars. And this is really great because there's freely available satellite imagery, which we can use to then track all of this. But at the same time, it offers a lot of challenges. How do you separate out mining activity from all of these natural processes that are taking place in real time? And that's sort of the big challenge we've been trying to work through. We have some initial outputs that have sort of, as a proof of concept, been very encouraging. We know that we can just, given a satellite image, we can separate out sand and gravel and everything else that exists around it. So in this map in the left, for example, you can sort of see that the areas in yellow are sand deposits. The areas in purple or magenta, I guess, are gravel deposits. And with very little effort and with existing tools, you can very easily see where gravel is being deposited and where it transitions to sand as you follow a river as it flows down from the mountains to the plains. In the river on the right, this is a site on the Sone. We're just looking again at using some of these existing tools we've built. And we kind of see that it is finding areas that are mining sites. It's not finding the mining scars just yet. So these are some of the things we've already done. And these are some of the things we want to work on in the future in collaboration with Siddharth and others, to think about how these tools can be extended to precisely detect the mining scars directly from satellite imagery. We want to be able to do this over time at scale up in river basins across India. And I can talk a little bit about how we want to do that, but maybe it's better to just go through this quickly. In particular, I think something that's possible to do using all of this imagery and open data that's available is to identify areas with high extraction risk. This could help us prioritize sites for monitoring. It could help us prioritize sites that anyone who's interested can then think about keeping track of in real time and integrating into India Sandwatch. Something that's really of big interest to us is thinking about how, assuming we can detect sand mines from satellite imagery clearly, can we also then keep track of illegal mining activities? This is really challenging because there's no complete data set on legal mining just yet. And some of the things Siddharth is doing hopefully will get us closer to having a data set on existing legal mining concessions available. And then using that, we can try and separate out sites we detect, which might be illegal sites. And the last thing, as I mentioned, we hope to do is, as we build these tools, we want to then integrate them into this portal that Veditum and Ooloi have built, which can then, and so the model outputs can then sort of prompt users to think about, all right, so there's a lot of mining happening in some of these sites. Maybe you could take a look at some of these sites and tell us a little more about what's going on there. So that's pretty much what we have planned. I think I have one more slide. Yeah, so we are currently sort of in the process of labeling some of these mining scars and thinking about how to extend some of these existing tools we've built to just identify sand, to specifically identify the mining scars, but our initial results are promising. I think it's very encouraging that we're able to do a lot with freely available data. At some point, we will try to invest in more high resolution stuff, but for now, like I said, it is optimistic. We're pretty optimistic that with just freely open access data that any of you on this call can access, we can build pretty good tools to keep track of at least a low level of sand mining activity. And yeah, we hope to speak to you and hear from you in the coming months. Thanks.
Thanks, Suraj. That was fascinating. I love it. I love what the possibilities that this is opening for us and for the advancement of the idea of public monitoring in general by using
Yeah.
by using and making this available. So thanks, Suraj. I think Samir will not be able to join from Rainmatter. So I have a video recording from him that I'd like to play. Just give me a second. Oh, wait 1 second. I need to enable sound. Sorry. Right. Okay. Are you able to see my screen? Yeah. All right. I'll just play this small message that Samir has sent in. He's unfortunately in a low network area.
Hi, this is Samir here from the Rainmatter Foundation. I'm delighted to be here at the launch of the India Sandwatch project and platform. At the foundation, we have always believed that the climate change problem, the planetary crisis, is one of place. So what do we mean by that? As we've lived on the planet, we have always taken its resources for granted. As we have lived our lives there, grown our food there, extracted resources for um, value addition, for our businesses, for all our needs, we have always assumed that these resources are infinite. We have always badly accounted for the ecosystems around us, for the complexity in all the natural systems around us that actually continue to provide for us even to this day. But we are at a point where this is starting to break. So, to fix the climate problem, it's very important that as individuals, as communities, even as governments, we actually become custodians of our resources. We become custodians of our ecology and ecosystems. And for that, a sense of ownership and a sense of understanding that demonstrates that ownership is very critical. If we don't understand what a river system is, for instance, what our relationship with this with the river system is, what parameters do we need to do the trade-offs against, we will always keep optimizing for the short term. So when we came across Siddharth's story and when we heard about his journey along the Ganges and along other rivers, uh, I think I think we were sold. The idea of understanding a river, its um, ecosystem functions, its commercial functions for the people living around it, the relationship in tradition, culture, lived daily experiences that the people had with the river. These are definitely worth documenting, not just from an academic point of view, but also from the point of view of the community's own perception about itself. The data that's gathered around sand mining, but also around the changes in the river as time has passed. I think this will help communities, this will help governments, this will help individual change makers understand the river system a lot better and be able to drive change that represents better long-term outcomes and not just short-term wins. Of course, we need this to happen not just for one river or a few rivers. We need this to happen for all water bodies across the country. We need this to happen for all large landscapes across the country, mountain ranges, and all landscape features in general. Because only when we start to understand this, only when we start to track this, only when we start to take ownership for this in any concerted way, are we going to be able to account for them? Are we will be able to make decisions that are in their favor. And we believe a platform like this has a major role to play in that, which is why we actually supported and funded this. We wish the platform huge success, not just for the sake of the teams behind the platform, but for the sake of my kids, your kids, and all of us. Thank you.
Right. So that was a very sobering message, but also a very encouraging message from Samir on how he's viewing this work. And I'll let you take your own inferences from it. So before we move into the question answers part, right, we'll open this floor up and we'll answer some of the questions that you've already put in the chat. I just have a few more slides to show to you. So just bear with me for another 3 to 4 minutes, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So I think some of what I'm going to say now is going to answer some questions that are in the chat. First is in regards to what's next with what we're doing. First is we invite you to visit the India Sandwatch website and check out the data that's already available on the platform. My colleague Anirvan will put the link to the platform in the chat here. We will also be sending these on email to you later tonight or tomorrow, some of these details so that you can check these out. Second is that this again answers some of the questions that are there in the chat. Who can add data to the platform and how do you add data to the platform? So what we want you to do is to come and join us for an introductory session to the platform. We're doing 3 sessions per week, and these will be 1.5 hour sessions where we'll take you through the platform, show you how it works, and create an account for you. Following which you will be able to submit data on the platform. And the initial 2 months will be a verified data collection process where we will have to approve the data that you're adding to the platform. And after that, we will transition you into being a contributor whose data will, who can then directly add data onto the platform. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. Second is that you've already heard some of our collaborators speak. You've heard them talk about possible use cases and the ways in which we can imagine this work going forward. So we want to hear from you on how do you think we can collaborate with your organization? Where does this intersect with your work? People working in the spaces of media, activism, justice, conservation, official actors, and more. My email address is on the screen. We'll also send this. You've been receiving emails from my email address, so you can always write to me on that. Also, we are planning to conduct in-person workshops starting later this year. So while we are trying to do regional workshops, we're also looking at ways in which we can combine these workshops with existing data-related, conservation-related, river-related, environment-related workshops and conferences that are happening, or climate-related workshops or conferences that are happening. We want to integrate these as sessions into those conferences as well. So if you have any thoughts on those, if you're involved in organizing any of those, please reach out to us and tell us. We'd love to be a part and make this a part of your conference. And any other ideas that you might have about collaboration, so please do reach out to us with that. Final updates from our end that we have 5 interns who worked with us for the months of June and July, who've created reports from different states of India. Over the next week, we will be releasing these reports so that you can read a status report from these 5 different states. Just to give you one mind-boggling figure is that from the state of Andhra Pradesh, the state has been reporting a revenue of around 800 crore rupees annually for all the sand mining that's happening in the state. And when there was a NGT committee formed through the National Green Tribunal led by the Andhra Pradesh State Pollution Control Board, which analyzed a single sand mine in Andhra Pradesh. They discovered that the revenue from that single sand mine was 450 crore rupees annually. A single sand mine had a revenue of 450 crores, where the state was declaring 800 crore rupees for the entire state over a year. So you can imagine the discrepancies, the fiscal discrepancies, and where this gap of the gap that is there in terms of money, where is it going? Those are questions that need to be answered, and you'll see some of these points raised in the different reports that we give you. In fact, let me add one more point. We mentioned that 2016 guidelines mandated that all states must have district survey reports. Many states started early, some states are in a transition process, but states like Assam have still not mandated their district through law for their districts to be creating those district survey reports. So there is a huge stagger in terms of where different states of India also are. So you will read about these in the reports that we will be releasing over the next week. And lastly, we are soon hiring for multiple positions at India Sandwatch and Veditum. So we'll make those announcements soon. So please keep a lookout. Follow us on social media. It's very straightforward handles, Veditum and India Sandwatch. So find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. So that's in terms of what's next from our end. And questions, let's get into the questions section. And before that, just wanted to show you an updated page of India Sandwatch with the logos of our partners, Wildlife Conservation Trust and Global Policy Lab as well. This is going to expand soon, hopefully with many more partners coming on board. Some are already in the pipeline who you'll see on the website very soon. So with that, I'll stop the screen share and we can possibly move into answering questions. Right. Okay, so there's a lot of questions. I'm going to try and answer some myself. I might ask some of my friends who have also spoken today to answer some of the questions. Before I forget, there are two links that Anirvan has put in the chat. One is for the platform and the second is a calendar of the upcoming introductory session. So you can sign up for whichever date works best for you. In terms of questions, are there any alternatives of river sand in India? I think this is a much discussed topic, Ranjit, your question regarding alternatives. There are alternatives. Not all alternatives are free of impact themselves. For example, M-sand, which comes from, for people living in Bangalore, they've seen the hills around Bangalore vanish in the pursuit of M-sand. So they may not be clean, but we may possibly, may be able to distribute the impact over multiple possible sources instead of putting all the weight on one source. Devika asks regarding that CRZ governs coastal clearances. So we don't have anything regarding river regulation zones similar to the CRZ, but we do have rules rules defining how licensing has to happen as far as sand mining is concerned. Whether they are followed or not is a whole different question, and which is the challenge that we're trying to address in some way. Pranam's question, I'm not reading out the questions because some of the questions are quite long. I'm trying to just quickly answer so that we can also take up some more questions that people might want to speak out with. Pranav asks about sand coming under the MMDR Act. The District Mining Authority does have the ability to check on this, and the powers have been distributed. In a lot of cases, the state pollution control boards also are monitoring, but in a lot of cases, the monitoring agencies' names you can find along with the environmental clearance and the tender documents that are given. And there's definitely a need for inclusion of the provisionary principle, say, for example, precautionary principle. But given the way the sector is working right now, there is not too much hope currently. We might move towards this in the future, but currently we don't see too much precautionary principle being applied in this case. Pooja, I think your question of whether sand mining can be identified for satellite images alone, I think Suraj's presentation might have answered that question to some extent. Ranjit, I think your question also about who can add data in the platform has been answered. Akansha asks, does the portal provide data statistics about how much illegal sand mining occurs annually? Or what is the purported fiscal loss with respect to illegal sand mining for each state? This is a very difficult question, Akansha. We first have to solve the problem of being able to say what's legal and illegal, which is what we are moving towards, which will then be followed by, if we are able to reach that in a proper way, to be able to say how much is occurring legally or illegally annually. But I think this is a step in that direction that we are taking. And Eshani's question regarding understanding revenue flow. I think there is some data being generated, as you had seen when Anirvan was presenting about revenue from the different district survey reports, and then some of the reports from the committees that are being created by the courts, which are starting to give us a sense of revenue flow. We're hoping that as more and more people add data to the platform, this becomes more and more visible, and we can see the discrepancy between the actual and the reported data. Right. So Aishwarya has asked 3 questions. Is district mineral fund provided to districts from where minor minerals like sand is being excavated? Yes, there is some provision with the DMF where minor minerals also have to be taken into account. And I think the comments by the while for sand mining activity, in situ rehabilitation and repair work is required of the actors who are doing the sand mining process. There is some kind of provision with the DMF as well, which was highlighted in the recent CAG report. How do journalists know about how much sand has been excavated? I think this is a very big challenge because we keep hearing about this technological solution that the government is implementing time and again, but till now we've not been able to see anywhere any proof of how the government is using technology to identify how much sand is being extracted, how is the monitoring system being put in place. So those are challenges that continue to exist. Whether we'll be able to do some of this work through technology or not, I think is a question for the future, but one hopes that the need for it itself reduces, that we can push for accountability enough that the system itself can give us some of these answers. In terms of transboundary rivers, definitely there is no international consultations, but even there are no local consultations between district survey report of district A versus district B, how upstream and downstream mining activities might be impacting and affecting the replenishment rates and availability of sand in A or B location. And finally, I think one question that Deepak has is quarrying vis-a-vis sand mining from water bodies. Right, Deepak, I think this is a very long question and a very long answer. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer the whole question right now because it has many nuances within the question. But there is a significant interconnection between various political actors, the economic benefits that are emerging from it, and the resource exploitation that is happening out of it, also driven by the kind of systems that we have, the kind of development paradigms under which we currently live. And quarrying versus sand mining from water bodies, I think sand mining is, what do you call it? Those are also quarries, but I'm guessing you are referring to quarries that are for stuff like iron ore, bauxite, and copper. So may not be able to comment completely on that right now, but the similarity definitely exists in terms of the interconnections between the powerful, the resource exploitation, and the leakage of money from the public exchequer's account. And finally, I think Akansha has a question. Would love to hear your thoughts on. In terms of reaching local communities, I think that's the final target that we have, that maybe someday we will be able to reach local communities who are affected by the issue of sand mining. What we are hoping is that we want to expand the number of collaborations that we have, through which we can reach out to different communities, because obviously it is impossible for a single organization to be able to address all challenges, to be able to be present in all locations geographically. But I think that is also the idea, that we acknowledge the fact that it is only through collaboration, it's only through partnerships can we advance any of this work forward. And we hope to make those collaborations and connections, and then enable our partner organizations who work with communities to be able to take this forward and advance the work. And in terms of what you've mentioned regarding the engagements of the politically situated people like panchayats, that is something that we hope starts to get sort of uncovered through the data collection that's happening via the platform. And one thing that I want to mention in terms of the word mafia, which we see used very often, is that in principle, we do not use the word mafia at Veditum or through the India Sandwatch work, because for most people, when you use the word mafia, that puts the actors outside the state, outside the administration. But what we know from our experience over time is that there is a lot of collusion that happens between state actors and non-state actors. So we refuse to use the word mafia because it has a certain idea in people's heads that this is outside the state. So we want to stay clear of that sort of connotation, and we want to make sure that this confusion does not occur, and we are able to clearly demonstrate who are the actors who are really involved. Then I think there's a question from Shishir. Shishir, you're around here. Do you want to unmute and say something? Also, because my throat is parched, so I'll also get a break.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Siddharth. This is really a brilliant initiative, and I see so much scope, for improving accountability around sand mining, and also for biodiversity as well as social ecological justice. So one of the applications that I thought of was when we were studying the small hydropower projects in the Western Ghats. What they would do is they would sort of close for maintenance work around summer when the water levels recede, and they keep the gates open. And once the monsoon starts, whatever all the sediments that are stuck in the reservoir, they are flushed downstream. So if you look at about a kilometer stretch of the river downstream of the small hydropower projects, it's completely filled with sediments, and this causes great damage to fish and other invertebrates that practically get buried. But again, one issue of detecting this is that these are smaller rivers, and usually this canopy cover, but still this could be something worth trying to explore and see, like how much of the river is impacted by this kind of unplanned like flushing of sediments downstream. And the other issue that came to my mind was more in terms of my current work, where I'm trying to understand how people here in the estuaries of the west flowing rivers of Western Ghats, these estuaries are commonly used by people to collect clams, which is an important source of protein and also a livelihood means. So the bivalve collecting community is often in conflict with people who mine sand. Okay, so sand mining also happens at a very small household scale, but then there are also these bigger boats that do mechanical dredging, and the bivalve collectors have a problem with these bigger dredging machines because they sort of scoop up this entire beds of sand, which also is the habitat for bivalves. So as I was thinking, if the like the Sandwatch portal could in any way empower them, because they're also fighting these court cases, and if there's any way. But again, you don't see these large sand patches like you do in the Ken and the Son rivers. It's mostly boats that go and like mechanically dredge. So I don't know how there might be some challenges there, but I was also thinking that the other which you also mentioned, that the portal could be useful in improving social ecological justice. Yeah, those were my thoughts.
Right. Thanks, Shishir. I think these are great points. And if any of the other partners would like to also respond to anything that is being asked in the comments in the chat section, please do, and also through the thoughts that are being put up. My quick response to you, Shishir, I think for the impact that is happening on the bivalve collectors in the estuary, I think if we are able to put together a sense, a frame of what is happening there and what are the legalities around it, I think at least we can build a case that then the community can use to advance the idea ahead. Because, for example, are machines allowed as part of the state laws? That be the starting point for us to look at this. So if we can put some of those bits, I think then we can build a strong case, and then maybe put a monitoring site via Sandwatch onto one of these places and say that, okay, let's monitor this over the next 6 months or 1 year and build a strong case that we can then take forward. So that's what my response is to your thought. But thanks for appreciating and sharing the possibilities. We'll definitely be in touch about this.
Sure, Sid. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing, if I can just add,
Yep.
just something that came to mind while I was looking at the questions. I think the way I see these questions are not necessarily questions to the India Sandwatch team. They feel more like research questions or provocations or projects that get triggered by the availability of a platform that allows this collection of data, right? Because right now there is a platform, not even a platform that has all the features we might want or all the things, and it definitely doesn't have all the data we would want, right? So I think it's going to be in trying to answer these questions, which intersect with your work, especially the way that the WCT team kind of illustrated, that we're going to probably be able to pick up specific regions or sub-basins or distributaries even, right? And then kind of build a certain density of data, which will allow some action to happen. So I think all of your questions show the various facets of how this work can have an impact, but I don't think for a second do we kind of feel that we're going to be able to do this, right? So I think there's a role for Veditum to play, there's a role for India Sandwatch to play, and that role is also one of being an ecosystem enabler in some sense, right? And I'm putting on our network weaving hat over here to kind of make this point that this is just the beginning. This is an invitation for each of those questions and all the sub questions that arise from that to become starting points for collaboration. So I think that's just one thing I just wanted to add as an invitation also.
Yeah, thanks, Akshay. I think this just illustrates the importance of the presence of Ooloi in this whole project, where sometimes where we might be running too fast and Ooloi and Akshay are like, this is where you need to pause and then get others on board, and then we can move forward together. So thanks, Akshay, for that. I think we have a couple of questions. Tuhin, we can definitely organize a workshop on this together. So let's definitely talk about it. If you'd like to unmute and also say anything, Tuhin, you can do that. And Rushikesh asks whether we have considered taking workshops in sand mining affected villages. Rushikesh, yes, I mean, that is where we want to reach, where we want the platform to reach. We might not be able to do it in all villages, but maybe you know some place where this is happening and you can work as a partner for us, where you enable the community in a village like that to take action. So that's what I would respond to that. And now this is an open floor invitation to anybody who wants to unmute and share their thoughts. We have some time left, but we also understand that there are time limitations for everybody. Nachiket, please go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Siddharth. I just want to, I was reading through the questions and I thought with your permission, I could just add a couple of points. So see, one thing is in the scale, given the scale of this issue, we also had a participant from the, the global sand crisis project. I forget the exact details of the person attending, but, I think somewhere, because all of us have gathered here with a common interest and concern about sand mining, some difficult questions to ask ourselves are also, who is exactly fighting against whom here, and I just want to bring it up because this keeps coming in not only academic discussions, but equally so in activist discussions. The people who want sand, the people who are excavating the sand, the communities that are both affected by sand mining and also are party to sand mining, also involved in sand mining as a means of livelihood. Very poor people are involved in sand mining. So, who is exactly fighting whom? What are the actors? What are the institutions? What are the scales at which this larger concern is going to be played out? I think those are issues that we constantly need to remind ourselves. I would just refer to one interesting case of during the Ganga River Basin Authority early meetings in the 1980s, when many fishing communities of Uttar Pradesh had actively demanded traditional sand mining rights to be given to them. And I think that's a fair demand. If you look at the fact that they had been doing that to, clear the river for navigation in the dry season and so on. So, again, who is pitted against whom, who is involved in those nexuses? I think we need more thinking on that. Another small point I just wanted to add to ma'am's comment, Mrs. Devika Rani's comment, which I think is, we can't think of the transferability, where, we have many rivers in the Gangetic Plains originating in the Himalayas, which have very high replenishment rates. So, the level of sand mining there, even if it appears very large, if you trucks, is a very different level from seeing a similar number of trucks in a central Indian river where replenishment rates are extremely low, given that they flow through a different geology and the rivers have a different geomorphological course and so on. So, I think again, locality, the idea of locality in really understanding and examining the impacts of sand mining, not only ecologically, but in terms of human scale and locality and vantage points, is something we all need to somewhere constantly remind ourselves of. It gets messier, and the messier it gets, the more exciting it gets. So I thank everybody for their very interesting inputs and comments. And thanks, Siddharth, for allowing me to speak.
No, I just wanted to add to what Nachiket said regarding the localization and thinking about how unique all the different locations and locations are, because that's exactly in this whole sand mining process what a district survey report is supposed to do. It is supposed to take into consideration these minute details about where the river is located, the replenishment rate, the deposits where it's happening and where it can be extracted from. But what it's become is it's become a revenue document as opposed to being a scientific document. And I think that's the crucial challenge, where a district survey report is not thinking that, okay, the river is passing through the boundary of my district, which means that the district opposite us is also going to extract from that same location. Then the science needs to inform and say that, okay, there is going to be an impact between both of you, and impact because of upstream and downstream actors also. And that science and that understanding of location has, I think there's a potential through district survey reports for us to introduce that from the official angle, and while all of us work from the civil society and scientific angle to put forward that localization aspect into this. So just wanted to add that on to Nachi's comment. Does anybody else have anything they want to add on here? Please feel free to unmute and speak.
Siddharth,
Yes, Tarun.
am I audible? Yeah. So I also wanted to check, are you aware of portals like the Global Forest Watch? Okay. And do you also plan to provide, say, basic analysis tools in terms of, say, change detection over a period of time? So let's say somebody, or like a journalist who's covering a particular area, wants to know what level of sand mining has taken place across years. Is there an increase in trend? And so those sorts of basic statistics, which are not otherwise very easy for a lot of people to undertake themselves.
Right. So I think because of what, say, Anirvan had showed us earlier, right? The collection pages where we are being able to see data localized to a certain kind of geography. I think the documentation from those fronts will be able to help us see some of these changes, but also that once the bulk increases of the data, some of these changes will become evident. So, for example, when you are digitizing what's the revenue data, in some cases, for example, in the Kaimur district of Bihar, we've been able to upload multiple documents from that district, and we've been able to see that it's been 140 crores, then 1 year it's been 2 crores, and then it's back to 140 crores, something like that. So that kind of a change detection at revenue was possible. But I think once we have more bulk of data, we'll be able to do more analysis and also offer that data for users to do the analysis themselves. There is like I could see a smile on Akshay's face where the possibilities are endless. But I think we're also trying to prioritize on some of the things that we need to do first and can do, and then we'll be very happy to work with partners to build some of these aspects to say that, okay, this is how we can do the analysis and then plug it into the platform without too much effort. So Akshay, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I did smile. I think a couple of things I'll add. One is that the platform you see today is not the platform that you'll see in 6 months, let alone a year. And that's not just in terms of the data, that's also in terms of what we're showing. And some of it is to be, one is just to be able to do things in phases so that you're putting it out there and receiving feedback and questions like this. And part of it is also just to be responsive then, right, to how people actually want to use it. So I think that's an important kind of part of it. The second thing I'll say is that especially with data analysis, what we found in our work in other platforms, etc., also is that people have very particular questions they want to answer with the data, which means that they need to see it in certain ways. And there are already fantastic data analysis tools out there, and everybody has their own kind of pet tools and visualizations or systems of analysis. So I think what a greater effort is going to be is to make that the data that is being collated through this sort of group effort, to make that available for download and access. Of course, I think there are a lot of facets of how access is going to be governed given the sensitivity of this issue. And I think that's another thing that we're figuring this out, right? As we're doing this. So I think making it possible for people to analyze the data in the way that they want to is going to be an important part of the work. I suspect what will happen over time is, based on questions that collaborators are asking, we might add ways in which the data is annotated. Certainly, that is going to be one part of the puzzle, and better documentation and things like that.
Right.
Hi, this is Ando from UC Berkeley. I just wanted to jump in and address Tarun's question. I think it's a great question, and the Global Forest Watch style of visualizations, I think, a particularly important one for journalists. And something we're trying to do at Berkeley is sort of the detection at scale, and then also the visualization at, let's say, recurring temporal timestamps. So right now we're kind of in the order of trying to detect changes on a monthly level, and we'll see how this evolves and what's kind of possible. Over the rainy season, it's going to be hard because of cloud cover for optical imagery, but we're also looking at synthetic aperture radar, which can penetrate clouds. But I think in the challenge is going to be sort of maintaining this over long periods of time, and running these sort of heavier deep learning algorithms. So it's part of what we're trying to sort out along with Veditum, but our hope is to be able to create very much like a Global Forest Watch kind of platform for this visual spatial analysis?
Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, that sounds good, exciting, and I'm going to be picking your brains on this. So,
Yeah, this is superb to hear. I think this guy, I'm learning so much listening to everybody as well. But okay, so with that, any other questions? I think we're almost at time, so we'll definitely close hard at 7. But we can also close earlier in case there are no questions. So I'll let you decide if you want to ask any questions or add a comment. No, don't need to doesn't need to be a question. You can just also tell us what you think about what you've seen. Or if there is nothing like that, then we can close.
Hi, my name is Varnita. This is a brilliant effort, and this the data that you're aggregating is going to the format that you're you're propounding is really brilliant, and we look forward to speaking with you more. We'll probably get back to you with some more questions and so on, and hopefully we can collaborate, especially around the issue of biodiversity changes because of sand mining and changes in riverine ecosystems. So great effort, and very nice to know that you guys are doing this. Another thing, the movie moving upstream that you have put up, and looking forward to watching it. So congratulations about that too.
Thank you. Thanks, Vandita. May I ask where are you referring to in terms of your work and like which organization?
So I'm from Metastring Foundation, and we kind of work in a similar. Our mandate is kind of similar to what you're doing. We want to build data systems, and essentially our mandate is to democratize data, right? And open data is one of those things that we work with. The two focus areas are biodiversity and health. And one of our platforms, the India Biodiversity Portal, is a very mature platform which essentially has a very large database of species observation data. And earlier you mentioned, right, that it would be interesting to overlay species observation data with, the sand mining data and so on that you're collecting. So that kind of, that's one of the points that I've noted down, and I would like to initiate a conversation around that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
thanks.
that's one of the areas in which we can partner and figure out how to put both of these, data together and come up with insights about how sand mining is changing biodiversity around riverine ecosystems.
Wonderful. Thanks, Vanita. I think we'll be in touch and talk about this further. And I just hope that more and more partnerships like these emerge as we move forward with the work. So thank you.
Yes, great. Nice to be part of this. Yeah.
Just time for one last comment if anybody wants to make it, or then we'll close. Anyone? All right. Okay, so I think if there are no comments, we're also almost at time. So we'll pause for today. Looking forward to seeing many of you. Those of you who are also watching the recording, check the description of the videos. You'll find the links to register for the sessions. Come and check out the platform and get in touch with us. Let's work together on advancing this in however ways and whichever ways we can.